Hey guys, Sean here at the Gardener Center, and here we are. It's a brand new year. We have a brand new season of gardening to look forward to. At this point in time, end of January, we are halfway through our astronomical winter, but the good news is we are 2/3 of the way through our meteorological winter. And you may not be thinking about gardening right now much, aside for maybe your houseplants. But now is definitely the time to be thinking about seed starting. If you've done it before, if you're thinking about doing it, nice thing about seeds is they have a really long shelf life because it's a little too early to start them right now, but there's no reason you can't buy them now and have them for later. What I'm gonna do today, you guys, if you've seen my videos before, you know I love to go after those questions that people ask all the time and address them during my videos. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna take a seed packet and I'm gonna go over basically the directions on the seed packet, because there's sometimes a lot of terms and a lot of techniques that they casually mention on there, and they may leave some people scratching their heads. So I'm going to dive into directions on the back of a seed packet today and let you know some things you really need to know if you've tried starting seeds before and have not had much luck, or if you're thinking of trying it this year. So stick around. All right, so first things first about seed starting. If you've tried seed starting in the past and it didn't go so well, don't be too dismayed by that, because to be perfectly honest with you, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's not something that you're necessarily going to get right the first time you try it. It does require a little bit of trial and error, kind of have to hone your craft a little bit. Don't be discouraged if you have not been successful in the past. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and a lot of mistakes that can be made with seed starting. And to be honest with you, I think the biggest mistake that people make with seed starting is people have a tendency to start them way too early. Everybody's kind of anxious to get things growing in the house during the winter time, but you know, especially when you're talking about vegetables and things for the vegetable garden, you really want to avoid the temptation to start things too early. So, very first thing on the package I'm going to go over today is when to start your seeds. So when you have a seed packet, it's going to tell you when to start your seeds based on the last frost. If you guys have seen my videos before, you've heard me talk about first frost and last frost 100 different times. It's not a fetish. It's just that the outdoor gardening, it just revolves around first and last frost dates. I'm going to be talking about that all the time. So your seed packets are going to tell you to start your seeds 2 weeks before last frost, or 4 weeks before our last frost, or 6 to 8 weeks before our last frost. So here's the thing you guys got to know. Our last frost date here in the southwestern part of Connecticut on the shoreline is May 15th, give or take. So when you're doing tomatoes, you want to be starting your tomatoes 6 weeks before May 15th. So we're talking about April 1st-ish. And I know that may seem really late to a lot of people, but you really don't want to start things too early. You want your tomato seedlings to be stocky and short when you transplant them outside. If you start them too early inside, they tend to stretch. They tend to grow too long. They may get leggy. So you want to fight the temptation to start them too early. Things like peppers. Peppers take 8 weeks before our last frost. So you'd start those, maybe March 15th. May 15th is the date to keep in mind, and it can even be a little later, because May 15th is our average last frost date. But to be honest with you, especially when we're talking about vegetables, a little later than May 15th for planting is best. This past year, we had snow squalls on the 13th of May, and it went well below freezing on the night of May 13th into the 14th. So with vegetables, especially your summer veggies, and I'm talking about things like cucumbers and tomatoes and eggplants and peppers, those guys, I really like to plant those outside closer to Memorial Day. But a good window, and I love holidays to remember gardening dates. If you keep Mother's Day to Memorial Day in mind and keep that in mind when you're following your instructions as to when to start them as your last frost date, in between Mother's Day and Memorial Day. So number one, that's how you want to plan for when to start your seeds. Another thing that you're going to see on a lot of different seed packets is they'll talk about transplanting and direct sow. So transplanting are the instructions for starting them inside in the house, either in little pots or little peat pellets, et cetera, et cetera. And you may see on a lot of different seeds, it may say to put 2 to 3 seeds per pot and then thin later. What they're talking about there is, like a lot of things in life, not everything's 100%. If you put 1 seed in each pot, there's a good chance that 1 seed's not going to germinate. If you put 2 or 3 in, chances are that you're going to get 1 or 2 to germinate, and then you thin out the 2 weakest ones, and you leave the 1 strongest plant behind. That's for starting them inside in pots. And then you'll also see directions for direct sow. And direct sow is when you're going directly in the ground with them. A lot of times you'll see that, especially with things like beets and carrots, those root vegetables that like to be planted directly. They don't like to be transplanted. And then a lot of other veggies like string beans and peas that have large seeds, even cucumbers. Those are really easy to direct sow in the garden as well. And you'll see the same sort of thing. It's telling you to put more seeds than you need to ensure that you get proper germination, and then you thin out the weakest of them. 2 words that really throw people off on the seed packet. Get questions about this all the time, especially if you're growing perennials. You won't see this really with your veggies, because for the most part veggies are tropical annual plants. But with a lot of hardy perennials, when you're reading your instructions, it may tell you this seed requires cold stratification, or this seed requires scarification. And I know these words aren't familiar to everybody, but what it really is, and sometimes they'll give you directions, well, you need to put these seeds on a wet paper towel in the refrigerator for 6 weeks. And although that may seem bizarre, if you think about it, what you're really doing is kind of emulating what would happen to seeds in nature. So for instance, a seed, like everybody loves butterfly weed and milkweed, very popular. A lot of people growing these from seed. So this is a hardy plant. So that is not consumed by birds. They don't eat the seeds. Everybody knows the milkweed. They fly around on those little parachutes they fly around on. So of course, eventually they hit the ground and they spend the winter in the soil. So when they're asking you to cold stratify a seed, what you're basically doing is simulating a seed being in the ground over the winter. It's cold, it's wet, and it spends the winter there. Seeds have an embryonic dormancy that needs to be broken, and that can't be broken until they go through that rest period. So cold and wet in the fridge or the freezer, you're simulating in the ground over the winter, cold stratification. Then we're going to get into scarification. Scarification is different. Scarification is when maybe the seed packet's asking you to rub seeds between 2 pieces of sandpaper, or maybe soak in hot water for a couple hours, or maybe if it's a larger seed, sometimes they'll ask you to take a sharp knife and maybe nick the corner. So in that case, what you're doing is you're simulating a seed passing through the digestive system of an animal. So think about it, the butterfly weed seeds, they fly around on their own. They don't need animals to get moved around. But a lot of seeds require animals or birds to eat them. And then the acids and the stomach acids of the animal is what breaks that dormancy. The coating is too thick. It has to pass through there. So when you're asked to nick a corner, or maybe hit a seed with a hammer, or soak it in hot water, you're simulating it passing through the digestive system of an animal. So people get really confused by those 2 terms, but I'm hoping by explaining to you why you're doing that, and it's not just to rub seeds around and between a couple of pieces of sandpaper for no reason, that'll take a little bit of the mystery out of that. Most important thing I think of what I just said, though, is remember those dates, please, because May 15th, Mother's Day, May 15th-ish to Memorial Day weekend, that's your last frost period. So keep that in mind and start your seeds with those dates in mind and you'll be good to go.